Rising nationalism, polarization, and the erosion of trust between communities and nations are real. Now, in this room, we have young leaders, we have youth, we have leaders who are not waiting for permission to respond to these pointers. They are already doing the work. They are doing the work of diplomacy, they're doing the work of peace building, often without titles. We have 40 minutes of discussion and 15 minutes for Q&A. So let's get straight into it. Please drop your questions in the chat as we go. I'll be watching and we'll open the floor once the panel discussion wraps. So permit me to go ahead to introduce our panel. So we have Henaka. Please forgive my pronunciation of the names. I'll just say your first name, or probably first and second, and then I'll give you the opportunity to properly introduce yourselves. Henaka, we have Emmanuel, we have Luca, Formichella, we have Joshua, and we have Yasmin. Panelists, please indicate if you are here and then do a proper introduction in 30 seconds, 40 seconds. Luca, I see
okay.
you.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emmanuel, and I'm a dietitian, and I'm also an advocate for girl child and women, and also a representative of the United Nations Youth Office here in Nigeria. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Luca, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. As stated, my name is Luca Formichella. I'm a university student. I'm 19 years old, but I am part of the World Food Forum Youth Assembly, Youth for Climate, and Yango organization, all branches of UN-affiliated youth organizations. And then I'm also the local operation network development officer for European Youth Network. And basically my passion is diplomacy, global citizenship, and just to get as much youth as possible within the decision-making spaces, in my case, being diplomacy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Henaka, are you here?
Okay, so I just introduced myself.
Say again.
I just introduced myself.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, this is Ene. I'm Ene.
No, so I was referring to Henaka.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be me. So my name is actually Chiranthi. In Sri Lanka, we have very long names, so you can call me Chira as well. Lovely to meet everyone here virtually. And my name is Chiranthi Senanayake, and I am representing the Melton Foundation here. So the Melton Foundation is an international non-governmental organization focusing on promoting global citizenship education amongst youth, especially university students. In terms of my background, I'm an attorney at law, and I actually work in development justice and rethinking development from a more indigenous, localized perspective. So I'm really excited to share my thoughts. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Lovely to meet you. Joshua, are you here? Yes, Jasmine. Jasmine, could you please introduce yourself? Okay, I guess it's just the three of us. Then we can continue. Welcome, all three of you. Thank you for bringing your perspectives into this room. Global citizenship isn't an abstract ideal for this panel. It's a working framework. It asks us to understand ourselves, not only as members of our own nations and cultures, but as participants in something shared, a common project bound by dignity, bound by justice, and mutual responsibility. Diplomacy at its best is what turns those values into practice, building understanding and resolving conflicts without resorting to violence. That's the spirit I want us to carry. That's the spirit I want to carry as well into the next 40. Well, we don't have 40 minutes anymore, but yeah, into the next few minutes. So I'd like to start with Henaka. What should I please just is Henaka also your name, or do you prefer to go by Chiranthi?
You can call me Henaka, that's fine. So Henaka is
Henaka,
actually
okay.
my family name, and we have very long names,
Okay.
so that's totally fine.
Okay. So I'll just call you Henaka. So I'd like to ask the first question to you. What does responsible global citizenship mean in a world where nationalism, polarism, and geopolitical rivalry are intensifying? And how do young people navigate that tension without losing their commitment to shared humanity?
Absolutely. So I think speaking about global citizenship is very important in the contemporary world where we are in what many define as a state of polycrisis. So a state of polycrisis is where you have multiple crises that are occurring in the world at the same time. It could be the conflict that is raging in the Middle East, or it could even be a food security challenge. It could also be climate change. And what's interesting about this reality of polycrisis is we're understanding that these crises aren't isolated, they're not mutually exclusive from one another. So, in such a situation, it is necessary for us to build a generation of, I wouldn't say activists, but actually thinkers and actors who are able to understand these interlinkages, who are able to understand that yes, localized action is important, but we operate within larger systems. We operate within processes, we operate within ecosystems. So global citizenship, in my opinion, is important purely for creating that mindset of interlinkages-based understanding of how crises are interlinked, and we must all act collaboratively to respond to these crises. So in that context, I think global citizenship is the ability to think and act globally while being rooted locally, understanding that our grounding is in the communities that we work with. However, in order for us to bring about the best impact, there needs to be a two-way transfer. You have international knowledge coming into the local communities and also local knowledge really being uplifted to more regional and international stages. So I know that sounds a little abstract, but since we're starting off the conversation, I just wanted to introduce it conceptually.
Okay, thank you so much. My key takeaway from what you've just said is for us to think and act globally while staying rooted locally. That's powerful. Luca, would you like to add to this?
Yes. So uh, Chiranthi has touched upon something very, very important, which is interstate collaboration. And to me, we live in a world where to look at your back garden, it's simply impossible. For the sole reason that we live in a globalized world. We're seeing it. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz created damages in Europe, in Japan, in Asia, in South America even. Um, the the change of regime in Venezuela has been starving Cuba of its energy. So we see how one piece of the domino falls and a whole bunch of repercussions, a whole series of repercussions uh, materialize worldwide. So to me, global citizenship is a must. And to me, what it means, um, it's more than just collaborating with other peers, but it's to cherish, understand our differences, our multiculturalism, our multi-ethnic backgrounds, cherish them, cherish the differences, and work together. Use each other's strength. Use, for example, a very simple analogy could be I'm European, for example. So Europe has a very strong network of welfare. So I could bring that cultural knowledge of very strong welfare systems, and then I could meet someone instead from the MENA region who has a very young and inspiring, proactive generation. So I could bring my knowledge, they could bring their knowledge, and we use that knowledge together instead of constantly looking at each other. I'm just Italian, someone's from Sri Lanka, Indian. Yes, we have a nationality, we have our culture, and that's beautiful. But I for me, achieving global citizenship could be that just as simple as uh, being simple as I'm from Italy, but I'm also a global citizen.
Thank
So
you.
that having
Thank you so much.
transnational thinking.
Thank you so much. I like that you said that we should cherish our differences and then work together. So collaboration is key here. And then would you like to contribute to this?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. So I would like to say that for me, to add to what Luca said, global leadership is very much important, especially in our world currently. And that is because it helps us to see beyond politics, political differences. It helps us to see beyond cultures. It helps us to see beyond just color or whatever it is. So it helps us to come together to build, have an understanding from different races, from different countries, and then in order to build peace and then improve the world generally. Thank you.
You're muted.
Sorry, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't realize I was muted. Okay, thank you so much, Ede, for your contribution. I would now direct the next question to you. How can young diplomats and peace builders create genuine dialogues across deep ideological, cultural, and political divides without defaulting to superficial consensus that papers over rather than resolve the underlying tensions? And then did you get the question?
Sorry, was that directed at me? Or was that
Is
at
it directed?
Ellen, yes,
Ellen,
Ellen.
yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Can you please repeat the question?
Okay, so I was asking how youth or young diplomats and peace builders can create genuine dialogue across deep ideological, cultural, and political divides without defaulting to superficial consensus that papers over rather than resolve the underlying tensions.
Okay, thank you so much. I think one of the first things that we need to do is to improve on education, because I think it's very important that we educate people on what global leadership is. And also education bring us together. I mean, like enlightening the people to come together, have the same understanding and knowledge in the sense of critical thinking, respect for humans, and also value to learn other culture. Take for instance, from different parts of the world, maybe in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, we can decide to learn each other's culture as youth, as people from different organizations can decide to learn. And also, I would say one of the things again that the youth can also do is to make use of digital platforms responsibly. It's something that media can connect people across cultures, across countries, across different nations. So I think here it is also very important that we make use of digital platforms like the social media to connect with one another. And lastly, I will also encourage that young people or youth should involve in leadership, in community leadership, by collaborating and affecting people's minds across borders, building trust, and also strengthening relationships. These are some of the ways that youth can be engaged in a global leadership in order to influence positive outcomes. Thank you. Sorry, you're muted.
Why does it keep happening to me? Thank you so much. You talked about cultural exchange, use of digital platforms responsibly, and then community leadership. Thank you so much for that. Chiranthi, I got it right this time. Yeah, this time.
Was
Okay, yes.
perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Okay, please. You may have the floor. Add the question, the same question, please.
Right. So it just to very quickly recap, it is about the use of diplomacy, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I think NA captured it quite well, but I just wanted to add a dimension now specifically with regards to the diplomacy angle of the topic that we're discussing. Previously diplomacy used to mean something very formal, which was either state-led or it is something where you would be perhaps a delegate of the United Nations or a permanent representative at one of the three major international financial organizations. But now, in the current world, diplomacy has decentralized quite a bit. Yes, there is the official diplomacy, state diplomacy, but we also have diplomacy taking far more alternative routes, like representing your country in a fellowship or being part of international spaces of this nature. So I think in that sense, the value of global citizenship and youth leadership is that participating in these forums is also a form of diplomacy and dialogue. And I think one of the strongest points in terms of global citizenship and youth is their capacity to engage in diplomacy and intercultural relationship building, which goes beyond what their governments and what their, let's say, states do formally. So I think that would be my humble addition to what Ene mentioned, that in whatever role that you serve, if you are operating within international spaces, you are serving a diplomatic role. And that diverges the attention towards, I think, away from structures and systems towards the power of the individual, especially the power of young leaders. So my humble request would be to consider all contributions platforms of this nature to be diplomatic platforms that will lead to something much bigger. It could be collaboration, it could be resource sharing or knowledge sharing.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Luca, would you like to add anything before you answer the next question?
Yeah, I'll add very quickly that everything is diplomacy. The way you talk to somebody in another country. Remember that every time you travel, even on vacation, and someone asks you, where are you from? You are intrinsically then representing where you're from. So everything does diplomacy. What you bring as a gift, what the words you say, how you say them, how you dress. Diplomacy isn't just a formal high-level weeks that we see once a year in the United Nations. It's not just ministers. There is so much of diplomacy that we do not see. In fact, the ambassador of Japan to Italy, recently I had the opportunity to meet him. He said 90% of diplomacy never gets on the news. And that is the best diplomacy to have. The key theme for me should be that I think should be discussed as well is how do we get youth on that 90%? Because right now youth have a lot. We have some. We have, for example, national youth diplomacy fellowships, internships. For example, here in Italy, but in actually 47 other countries, there is the United Nations Youth Delegate Program with the United Nations Development Program. But that, yes, it has power. Yes, some countries give it more. For example, I know Italy, Germany, and Denmark, for example, they sometimes have their youth delegates as the head delegate with decision-making power. However, most of the other 44 states still use their youth delegate as more of consultative observers. For example, the United States doesn't even call their delegates United Nations youth delegates, but rather United Nations youth observers. So right now, the problem is getting the youth representation in diplomacy from merely symbolic, meaning from observers and advisors to co-producers of diplomacy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, the question that you have raised about getting youth on the 90% would actually still come and peace building. And how do young people harness the latter while resisting the former?
Okay, so social media plays a gigantic role. Social media has become, for generations, entire generation, the primary source of media collection, of news. And that can be a very stark double-edged sword. Because if not used properly, social media can become very dangerous. We've seen it with cyberbullying and many other potential problems. But today, I want to focus on the good stuff, on what the potential is, because I'm an optimist. So by nature, I want to look at the good in things. Social media has connected youth from around the globe. It helped shape the idea that we need global citizens. It's the first time in history where it takes me 10 seconds to talk with another 19-year-old who lives 10,000 kilometers away, 8,000 miles. And this is important because this connection strengthens messages. For example, how many of you have heard of the Global Summit Flotilla? Started sailing in the Mediterranean and then was supposed to bring humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. That message, the flotilla, gained massive amounts of support through social media. It gained millions of interactions of support to the point where it forced the French, Italian, and Spanish government to send protection military vessels to protect the Summit flotilla. As we know, then it was still captured, and we know how that went. But we saw that through social media, helped shape a message so big that essentially forced governments to protect the flotilla and thus adhere to what youth were asking for. So this is the power of social media. And also, social media, to me, allows each other to, share opportunities with one another. There's this beautiful Instagram profile that I recommend to watch. No sponsoring, genuinely from a personal advice. She's Italian. She's called Giulia Tariello. She's built a massive following, and basically she shares fellowships, events, and just opportunities for youth within the United Nations and European Union framework, but not just the European Union, because recently she started sharing opportunities provided by the African Union and provided by OECD. So this is the strength of social media. It can just exponentially strengthen messages and connect each other as youth. And yeah, so social media is a potentially very beneficial source if we use it correctly. Madam, you're still muted.
Thank you. Thank you for the timely notification. Yeah, so I was just saying that I see Ellen nodding in agreement, and I would like to add to what Luca had said. You're
Annie,
muted.
would you like to add? Or
You're
should
muted.
I? Please go ahead, and then I will follow you.
Oh, okay. So, first of all, I think I can totally agree with what Luca said because social media has a lot to contribute to our society, to our community, to the world generally. And social media can either influence positively or negatively, just like he said. But it's either we use it to spread a positive impact by making it to as a platform to share, talk about our stories, read our information, or most times people use it to spread misinformation, hate speech that can bring disunity in the society, in the world, or in the community. So I say that it is also a good platform that we use can make use of, but it is very important that we use it positively. Just like I mentioned the first time, making use of digital platforms positively to spread positive information that we help
Thank
us
you.
generally.
Yes, thank you so much. There are quite some questions already in the chat. Please keep the questions coming in as they will be attended to in another 10, 15 minutes. Chiranthi, would you like to buttress on what the panelists have talked about?
Absolutely. So I think I completely resonate with what both Luca and Ene mentioned because, excuse me, that kind of captures the power of social media as a modern space of protest and as a modern system of check and balance where you hold systems, governments accountable. And it is also, I think, the most effective tool of globalization, which has paved way for global citizenship as well. But I think here I might perhaps come across a little bit, I wouldn't call it pessimistic, but realistic, purely because at the Melton Foundation, we actually organize 2 fellowships with regards to global citizenship. That's the Global Citizenship Learning Program, which, of course, is actually curated towards 5 partner universities. But since Luca very positively spoke about the importance of sharing opportunities, there is another fellowship program, which is called the Global Solvers Accelerator. I'll drop a link to it so everyone here can actually apply for it if you are a founder or if you have your own movement. But having worked in the fellowship spaces, what I have also realized is social media has created this reality where it has made activism into something that is far more digital as opposed to community oriented. So what we have noticed is that, yes, social media is important, but most often than not, because the visibility, the likes, the spotlight has become so important in the development sector that it has become a bit about marketing for goodness as opposed to working with the communities, getting your hands dirty. And it has also created this rift between those who are actors within communities but don't have access to social media and those who don't act in communities but have larger followings. So even when you apply for grants now, they would ask you about your organization's social media platforms and you get a leverage if you have, let's say, greater following. So there is that bit of a dilemma with regards to the impact of social media on what really is activism, advocacy, and community engagement. And there is a water as to whether or not we're becoming very comfortable with appearing to do good work as opposed to consistently engaging with systems and communities. I don't mean to sound negative, but I think that is a reality that has been developing, which as young people, we have to be a little conscious about.
Thank you so much. This time I'm not muted. Thank you so much for that thoughtful addition. please just feel free to put out your LinkedIn bio on the chat. I'm sure that a lot of people would like to connect with you and continue this conversation. So just put it on. Luca, this question is directed at you, and then after Luca, Chiranthi, please, you can build on what he has said. So it's about young people. So yeah, how do we build a generation of young global citizens or young global leaders who are deeply rooted in their own cultural identity while maintaining genuinely open to curious and then, sorry, I'm going to take the question again. How do we build a generation of young global citizens who are deeply rooted in their own cultural identity while maintaining genuinely open to and curious about the world beyond their immediate experience?
Okay. See, this is a question that would require perhaps weeks of debates and works and actual experts, much perhaps more qualified than I am. But I'm going to try and give my idea. To me, it starts in the classroom. To me, this starts at 6-year-olds, grade 1, because most of the focus of classrooms today still resides in the history and the culture of that country or that region. However, the reality is you shape the way young leaders think and where they spend the most environment. And from ages 6 to 18, most people spend most of their time within the classroom. So curriculums need to start being shaped less on national pride and national glory. And I speak again as an Italian, I can give you the example that in Italy, at least 3 years, 3 good years are given to the Roman Empire. Yes, important, amazing, but why not about the Persian Empire that brought to us the basics of mathematics that have then developed through millennia to today what the technological innovation is, and it didn't start in you. See, to me, this starts in the classroom, and then it continues up. Because once you mold youth, children, and scholars into opening their mind to something that there is more to the world than just my region, than just the European Union, than just Italy, than just Germany, Nigeria, United States, Argentina. But there is a whole world out there, and there is value and resources that we don't have that another region has, and there's values that we have another region doesn't. So we must open the mind of youth to the idea that our culture, yes, it's valuable and it makes us us, but we cannot think as an isolated phone anymore. We must think globally. We must think that the decision I take will have effect not just on my community, but in multiple communities. It starts in the classroom. For example, in universities, instead of doing something that I do not really like, is seeing in curriculum of bachelor degrees, so not specialization, bachelor degrees, the most simple university degree you can get. In Italy, instead of having a European history course, put a global history course where you focus 1/3 on European history, 1/3 on just saying African history, 1/3 on Asian history. But then again, it would get more complicated because Asian
Thank
history is
you.
not just one history, it's
Thank you so
multiple.
much, Luca. I see you have spoken extensively about this because you're speaking from the perspective of a young person. So, Chiranthi, I'd like for you to add to what Luca has said. You're muted.
Sorry, absolutely. Thank you. I think Luca covered the most important part, which is formal education, especially school education in shaping global citizenship. Maybe I could humbly add to it by sharing across what we define as global citizenship at the Melton Foundation. So we have our own unique global citizenship framework, which believes that global citizenship rests on four pillars. And I'll just very quickly introduce the pillars. And these pillars are interconnected. They sort of, rather than being, pillars in a traditional sense, they're like pathways that kind of weave in together to form a holistic global citizenship experience. So the first sort of pathway is understanding of self. The fact that we are able to foster a generation of thinkers and actors who have empathy, who have a proper understanding of themselves, as well as those who are grounded on their own identities. Then the second pathway is making sense of the world. How is it that we understand the impact of systems and its trickle-down effect into our everyday lives? The third one is collaborating across boundaries, which I think both my fellow speakers have touched upon extensively, but that is where we actively see how we can work together to actually overcome our differences and celebrate the diversity. Then the fourth component of it is enabling and driving change, which is where we are able to place young people, I think this was also captured earlier, within spaces where policies are made and dialogue and discussion is done, which leads to these larger systems operating. So that is the sort of the more conceptual understanding of global citizenship. Having said that, I think the best way for us to create global citizens is through formal and informal learning spaces. So Luca spoke about the school system, but I also wanted to touch upon the value of creating learning programs within universities, fellowship spaces for global citizenship. I think I've only come across maybe one master's course that's dedicated to global citizenship. So that I think is one way. And the second way is informal spaces. What I mean by that is all the young leaders here, they're part of some sort of space. It could be, let's say, the young, Christian men's association or women's association, and where you're attached to the church, or it could be some sort of sports committee where you are part of like a local sports group. All of these spaces are opportunities for us to speak about global citizenship. So in that sense, there is a need for proactive advocacy and conversation about global citizenship in every informal space that we have access to. I think our contribution there is very important.
Yeah, thank you so much. And could you please add just in a minute or less to what Chiranthi and Luca have said?
Okay, so the both of them have said a lot, and I feel like before I don't know what to add. They're basically actually spoke from what I have in mind, and just to add to it, to what they've said so far, I just want to encourage that it is very important that we can include some of this education in our schools right from childhood. I mean, instead of just like she made mention in fellowship, in communities, and so on, I also encourage that we include it right from childhood, just like we have we encourage gender equality and so many things that we put out there currently in so many societies. So I will encourage that we can start informing people and enlightening them about global leadership.
Thank you so much, Ene. Thank you. I would now address this question, or I would channel this question to you. In context of active conflict or post-conflict recovery, what does meaningful youth participation in peace building and reconciliation process look like? And what support do young builders need to sustain that work over the long term? And then did you get my question?
Okay, yeah. I was trying to ask you if you can help me rephrase the question again.
Say again.
I was trying to ask if you can help me rephrase the question, please.
Okay, so I'll just try to repeat it. If that doesn't work out, then I'll try to rephrase. In context of active conflict or post-conflict recovery, there's conflict and or in a situation where there's been conflict and then it's now time to recover from the conflict. What does meaningful youth participation in peace building and reconciliation process look like? And what support do young peace builders like yourself, like Luca, like Chiranthi, what do they need to support or to sustain that work over long term, not just today, not just a week from now, not 2 years from now, but to sustain it long term. 10 years from today, it's still working. 20 years from today, it's still working.
Okay. So I think first of all, one of the things I will encourage or advise is that we how do I put it? Sorry, trying to look for the right word or the right the right word to, yeah, I think one of the first things we have to do as youth and as a community is to create a condition where communities can live together peacefully. And how do we make that possible? I think first of all, using a safe space, just like the social media platform that we earlier spoke about, whereby we need to have lots of youth to start voicing out, start speaking about diplomacy, start engaging on peace building, start giving more life, start doing content or creating content in their life. And also in platforms just like in the United Nations, we can have people advocating for it, not just limited to that platform, but also in our local communities, whereby we go to rural communities, meet people, engage them, enlighten them, educate them on what peace building is. Now, one of the main things I understand is that if we can educate a community and they understand it, it is very difficult to erase that knowledge that they already have. So it is also important that we need to start bringing the younger generation on what peace building is, on how it is very important to relate from the south to the east, from the west to the north, on how it is also very important that we need to peacefully live together, understand our language. It doesn't mean that we need to forfeit our language or our culture, but it also means that we need to have the understanding of what the other person's culture is, of what the other person's uh, uh, tradition or whatever their country speaks about. So it encourages respect, empathy, and cooperation. So I'll say the major thing is to engage the younger generation and also breed more younger youth who can speak on this on social media platforms and also educate people on webinars, on different platforms in younger schools and so many places. This will leave a long-lasting understanding, and with that, education hardly goes out of time or extinct. I mean, if they are educated with it, they can pass it to the generation to come.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the meaningful contribution. Luca, could you please show more light on this?
Sorry, could you repeat? I didn't quite catch.
Okay, so the question is, in context of active conflict or post-conflict recovery, what does meaningful youth participation in peace building and reconciliation process look like? And what support do young peace builders need to sustain that work over the long term?
Okay. So I will speak about what I know. Unfortunately, I've never encountered or had to deal with youth in war situations. Unfortunately, the type of work I've always done and the type of experiences that have led me to where I am today have always been more on conflict prevention. So I'm not the biggest expert in conflict affected areas, but what I can say is, especially in post conflict and conflict prevention, which is something that in today's world is understandably, and I'm going to be very frank here, almost incredibly forgotten about, because it looks as if violence is back to being almost before diplomacy, which is absolutely the worst way to push innovation and push global citizenship. Because I'm a strong believer that we need to talk, and that conflicts can always be resolved through diplomacy rather than conflict, even when conflicts seem fast. However, there's one statistic from the Women in Diplomacy Index that is very, very important to understand why the situation is so dire. Only, and I'm talking, they stipulated that in the region with the most female ambassadors is Europe and North America. Do you know how much that percentage is? It's nowhere near 50%. In fact, it doesn't even reach 30%. It's 22%. However, the same organization has filed a report understanding that where women are present in diplomacy, conflict is averted easier. Why? Because if you only have men in those spaces, if you only have men, both adults or youth, you're accounting for almost only 49% of the population. You're basically excluding 51% of the population. This is important. It's not just about gender equality. Of course it is. It goes into a deeper problem, that is conflict prevention. If you include women, more women, and you make the situation more equal, then it is statistically proven that it is easier to resolve conflict before conflict begins. And it is easier to access diplomatic passages. And I want to conclude by just saying this. The more women are included in diplomatic spaces, the more diplomacy gains, because the more people are are easily entering diplomacy, the easier it is to talk. And the more we talk, the more we realize how stupid, and I'm sorry for the frank word, but armed conflict, is objectively, in my opinion. So the more people we include in diplomatic spaces, the easier it becomes to talk and the harder it is to pick up what.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Luca. Chiranthi, in less than a minute, would you like to wrap it up here for us?
Sure. I think maybe I'll quickly add that an important resource to really understand youth, peace, and security and the role of youth in peace building is Resolution 2250 of the United Nations. I consider that to be one of the success points of the UN's advocacy for youth, peace, and security. So if anyone would like to read that, that would actually add more context to it. But sort of extracting from that, I think we need to understand peace is not just the absence of conflict. It is so much more, and it is interconnected into other dimensions as well, such as, for example, quality of life, protection of a livable planet. They all contribute to a peaceful environment. So within that realm of thinking, I think young people have responsibility within two levels. The first is intra-community advocacy, the fact that we ourselves are conscious of our exposure to extremism, to bias, to misinformation. And the second level is promoting interfaith and interreligious collaboration, because young people seem to be vanguards of and have acted as vanguards of interfaith and interreligious action. So that is my humble addition.
Thank you so much. So we have quite a few questions and we're already running out of time. So would go with the first question, and anyone who's ready to answer the question can just with a show of hands indicate, and then I can call out. So the first question: how can global leaders utilize transactional networks and digital innovation to protect human rights and advance education in heavily restricted regimes like in Afghanistan?
Sorry, Blessing, I just wanted to check, is the question in the chat or?
Oh, yes, it's in the chat right here from Iham Amadi.
Okay, right. Oh,
Yeah. So how can global leaders utilize transactional networks and digital innovation to protect human rights and advance education in heavily restricted regimes like Afghanistan?
sure. So maybe I can start and would love to hear what Luca and
Okay.
Ene has to say about this. So I think this
Okay.
particular answering this question is a little bit of a challenge. Why I say that is because I think the person who asked the question, Ilham, sorry, is spot on about this, because when you are living within heavily restricted regimes, especially, I think Afghanistan has been used as an example here, and we have several other examples that can be dwelled upon. The difficulty is that you don't essentially have access to the same international spaces that we would otherwise have with a country that is far more globalized and globally connected. So in that sense, I think one, it is very heavily dependent on how much of access we have to these transnational networks. So for example, in Afghanistan, we see that many don't have access to the internet. So digital and internet literacy is a challenge. And the other aspect is there's a gendered lens of digital and digital and internet literacy access, which is the fact that women are far less likely to access the internet in Afghanistan. So that challenge is there. But going beyond that challenge, if there is a possibility to utilize transnational and digital innovation networks, I think the best is to provide support by leveraging resources. So I'll quickly share an example of a project that one of our fellows at the Melton Foundation does. So he's Afghani, but he's able to do this because he is in refugee status in Canada. So he has his own organization that is curated towards providing access to job opportunities outside of Afghanistan, or perhaps even providing information on organizations that work in safe spaces in Afghanistan to Afghani people. So I think he runs his own alternative digital network, but it has a very tech dimension of it, which I also can't explain, I think, properly. But that is an example that adds to the question that Ilham asked.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move straight to the next question, and any of the panelists can also address it. From Omondi Mark. Why must youth struggle for their agendas to be tabled? Let us discover where the gap is. So anyone can shoot for this.
Right. I'll try.
Okay.
So to me, this goes have historical roots, because historically, unfortunately, we've built a global society where there's a big emphasis on so-called wisdom, and wisdom is wrongly associated with age. So in my opinion, when you look at top diplomats or embassy heads of embassy or chief of missions, you'll realize that a good chunk of those ambassadors, the percentage right now slips my mind, but it is over 40%, is over the age of 45. So that means that there is a society in which we still unfortunately value what I call gray hair privilege, meaning that older age is associated with more experience. And perhaps, yes, perhaps there is more experience. You've had more years of on the field work. So, but I think the gap is that youth have been trying to combat this the wrong way. We've been trying to form to the status to fight the status. Um, See, one thing that I always say is, uh, I've, in my opinion, at least, I've seen a lot of young people try to conform. You know, it's not the suit that we wear, it's not the tie that I'm wearing currently that is going to get me into that space. We are young. We perhaps don't have such experience, but we have something that adults do not. That is our forward thinking. That is our ability to be bold, to ask bold questions, to come up with new, bold, and unforeseen innovative solutions. To our side, we have the fact that we were born with social media, with technology. We have a global community around us of youth through our phone. So we must play to the strengths we have. We must not downplay those strengths and conform to the system that already exists. And also, as presented yesterday in session 9, during the keynote address, I think youth should do 4 things. That is participation. We need youth to continuously apply, to continuously knock on the door and be there and demand to be there. We need action. We need tangible, concrete action, evidence. We need projects. We need results. We need to go there and knock on the door and demand a seat. Not demand it just because, oh, we need to lower the median age, but because we have something to share and we have something that you need. That is done through action. That is done through gathering evidence. And then there's persistence. It's not going to be easy. We're going to get a lot of no's. We're going to get a lot of pushback because things don't change without pushback. But we need to keep going. We need to keep applying, even when a door closes, an even bigger one will open. And then fourth, and I'll finish, I promise. We need credibility. So
Yeah.
credibility is, you need to have those three and be credible. You need to go there with demanding while being competent, while being there because you have a plan, you have an idea, and you have the credibility to demand to be there. Not just because you're 19 or 20, but because you're 20 and you have something important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Luca. We have less than, I'm sure, maybe 2 or 3 minutes to um, conclude this session. But I just want to say that so far it's been an eye-opening session. It's been really engaging. Thank you so much, Ene. Thank you, Chiranthi. Thank you so much, Luca, for being on this conversation with me. Now I would open the floor up for anyone who has a question to ask any of our speakers while they are getting ready. And if you have anything to add as we wrap it all up.
Okay, sorry, did you ask me a question?
Yes, I was asking if you have anything to say as we're coming to the end of the session. We have less than a minute or two to wrap it all up. So any closing remarks, any message you'd like to, share out there?
Okay, so I think first of all, I am still going to be dwelling on what I've been dwelling on before because I'm a big person on education. So I always love to see people get educated on topics like this and having understanding on this. So I'll say that our universities, and so many platforms to start educating people. And I'm sorry for the noise. So I'll say that so sorry about that. I'll say that young people can become responsible as global citizens who build bridges instead of walls, using of dialogue instead of hostility, and promote peace, cooperation, and understanding in our world.
Thank
And
you so
often
much, Enen. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all that you have said. Chiranthi, in less than 30 seconds, can you hit it in less than 30 seconds?
Sure, I'm going to try my best. I think the final closing remarks I have is firstly, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share. And having said that, I would say global citizenship is really a mindset, a perspective, a skill that we can all develop. It's within us, and it's something that we need to actively hold ourselves accountable for embodying through our work and through everything that we do.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, okay, Luca, can we try to make it in
Yes.
30 seconds as well?
In 30 seconds, of course, I can try. Remember, only together we can change the world. Only through global citizenship we can change the world. And second most important, because most important is global citizenship, you're never too young, too inexperienced, or too bold to change the world. So be young,
Thank
work
you.
together, and go change the world.
Thank you so much. This brings us to the end of this session. I'm not sure we have any other questions, but I would like to say thank you, dear panelists.